miss fireflies. When I was a kid, we had family reunions every year on Father's Day, and we always held it at this old Indian fort close to where I lived. It was called Fort Belknap. The adults would gather on Saturday night, and they'd sing hymns in the old chapel, while the kids would, just run around and play in the fort. We'd climb the defensive walls and, throw around a frisbee or a football. It was a very magical time for me as a kid because, we'd be out there playing and having fun, and then as the sun went down and the stars came out, the ground would suddenly just become illuminated with thousands of blinking little yellow lights streaking around in these almost mystical swarms. And it was all accompanied by this chorus of my family members singing old time, gospel songs and the choir right there. It was really great. And this probably sounds like I'm waxing nostalgic here, and clearly I am. But I mean, this is a core memory for me. Like I said, it was like a magical thing when I was a kid. Fireflies were everywhere when I was growing up. I mean, any summer night, we'd have hundreds of them in our backyard. We never even bothered to catch them. People always talk about catching them in jars and stuff like that. We didn't even bother to because they were just everywhere. Flash forward to today, my wife and I were handing out Halloween candy on Halloween night, and I saw one firefly in the yard, and I almost scared the kids because I freaked out so much. I feel like seeing a firefly now is kind of like seeing a shooting star. It's like a noteworthy thing. Now, granted, I live in the city now, and I used to live in the country back then. Obviously, there were more bugs in the country, but, my family still lives there, and I make that drive all the time, and that drive has changed. When I was in college and I made that same drive, I would have to wash my car when I got home because it was just covered with bug guts, like moths and mayflies, mosquitoes, big fat grasshoppers. It was gross. But nowadays, I get a handful of dead bugs on there, but nothing like it used to be. I'm sure many of you have probably had a similar experience, and you maybe even thought it was a good thing. It is not. You're not crazy. Bug populations have been declining, all around the world, in alarming numbers. So much so that researchers have started calling it the bug apocalypse. The story I just told is anecdotal, and I'm sure many of you have had a similar experience. I'm sure many of you are sharing that experience in the comments right now. But it's not just anecdotal, and it's not just the stories that people are telling. It is true. Bugs have been vanishing for a while now, and the numbers are kind of crazy. In Germany, they have these insect reserves, kind of like animal reserves, but for insects, where they actually track the insects and the numbers and whatnot, and they've seen a 75% drop in less than 30 years. The number of beetles has dropped by 83% here in the US in the last 45 years. In Puerto Rico, insect biomass has dropped 60-fold over the last 50 years. And I'm not just talking about in the cities, I mean in protected areas like those German reserves that I was talking about. Those are pretty far away from human influence. It's estimated that insect biomass declines by 1% to 2% every single year. Dr. David Wagner thinks that that's actually too low, telling The Guardian, quote, "Now I would say that 2% is happening in some areas, and we're seeing some places threatened by climate change or urbanization or agriculture get as high as 5% decline per year." The journal Ecology published a study that found that the number of flying insects declined by an average of 6.6% annually over 15 years. That's almost a 73% drop in the population. You want more scary stats? Here's one more scary stat. The Bumblebee Conservation Trust in the UK found in 2024 that it was the worst year for bumblebees since they began recording their numbers. It showed that on average, 24 bee species in Great Britain declined by 22.5%. Some species even dropped by 39%. Yes, big numbers, big scary. Here's why it matters. All right, let's start with the bees. We all love our bees, right? They're nature's pollinators. But bees aren't the only pollinators out there. There's butterflies, ants, beetles, even, I hate to admit it, wasps. They're all doing the hard work of pollinating more than 80% of the world's flowering plants. Plants that give us things like fruit, vegetables, nuts, spices, coffee, and chocolate. Thank you, pollinators. Not having pollinating insects would just be beyond devastating. And it's not just about our food supply, but also for the economy. There was a study from 2012 that estimated that the economic value of insect pollination was $34 billion, just in the US. Those are some very underpaid bees. They need to unionize. Plus, without pollinators, some plants and trees would just disappear entirely. Like the Joshua tree. We'd never be able to listen to that album again. But no, really, the Joshua tree relies on the yucca moth in order to reproduce. And the moth also depends on the tree, so it's got a symbiosis there. Another example is the fig tree that relies on the fig wasp to reproduce, and vice versa. The fig wasp leaves its eggs in the figs, which is why I can't eat figs anymore. I can't. Fig Newtons, more like dead unborn wasp Newtons. They're still yummy. I mean, not to even mention the predators that rely on insect populations to survive. Losing bugs would destroy entire ecosystems. Like, you might have heard the story about the wolves in Yellowstone. Yeah, so in 1995, they reintroduced wolves to Yellowstone after being gone for like 70 years. There was a very good reason for this. They did it because in the absence of the wolves, the elk population exploded, which sounds great for the elk, right? The problem is all these elk would overgraze the park's lower valleys, meaning like mice and rabbits didn't have vegetation to hide under, and then they were eaten by coyotes. Also, grizzly bears had no berries to feed on, and they get very angry with no berries. So they reintroduced the wolves, and the elk kind of changed their behavior. They avoided certain parts of the park where they might be trapped, like the valleys and the gorges. Those areas started to regrow pretty quickly. The trees recovered because they weren't being eaten or rubbed on by the elk. Flowers and shrubs increased in that same area. This caused more birds to come into the park, along with more bees and other pollinators that the birds would then eat. But here's the part that really blows my mind, and you might have heard about this, but reintroducing these wolves literally changed the flow of the Yellowstone River. Because the Yellowstone River was the main water source for all these elks, and so they would gather there, and this would like erode the riverbanks because there were so many elk standing on the riverbanks. And then once all those elk were gone, there was less erosion, and this stabilized the river, and it kind of changed the flow of it. Some of the sections narrowed, some pools formed, fish and water insects, increased in numbers, and a more diverse habitat was created. The insects also play a role in what they call biological control. So like that's when natural methods are used to stop invasive species or pests that destroy crops. Take, for example, the flower fly. It's a pollinator, but also a natural enemy of aphids, which suck the sap out of plants. So they both pollinate and protect the plants. Biological control. Then there's the minute pirate bug. They're only pirates for a minute, apparently. If you're a leafhopper or an aphid or a mite, you better batten down the hatches, because the minute pirate bug will make you walk the plank by eating you. Is that metaphor work? There's also the Japanese kudzu bug, which eats kudzu plants and keeps it from spreading everywhere. The kudzu bugs also eat soy plants, though, which isn't so great. So the bugs are dying. They're very important. What's causing this? Well, one cause is habitat destruction. Right? So like over centuries, we've cleared out a bunch of forests and fields for roads, houses, farms, factories, golf courses. And with farming, it's changed over the years. It didn't used to be quite so intensive. This kind of created a patchwork of habitats like hay meadows and fields full of weeds that the insects could gravitate toward. But modern farming is all about size. Huge tracts of land that are created and maintained to near perfection. How are they maintained to perfection? Pesticides. Another reason all the bugs are disappearing. And there's one class of pesticides that stands out. They're called neonicotinoids, or neonics for short. They work basically by attacking the insect's nervous system, and they're used everywhere. Landscaping, gardening, farming. In fact, they're used pretty heavily to treat 160 million acres of farmland in the United States. They first came into use in the 80s, and the problem is they don't really leave the soil. They remain in the soil over the years, so they compound over time. What this means is that U.S. farmlands are now up to 48 times more toxic to insects than 40 years ago. We also eat the food that's grown in that toxic soil. Just saying. And neonics don't just kill insects, it messes with their nervous system. So like take bees, it can mess with their ability to navigate and get back to the hive. And when they do get back to the hive, they carry that pesticide with them. So bees that got nowhere near the field can, be affected by it as well. They can harm beetles and aquatic insects when they run off into streams. And neonics are also used to like coat things like say corn, soy, cotton seeds, and this lets the chemicals soak into the plant's tissue, which makes the whole plant toxic to insects. And while it's not as toxic to us as it is to insects, we are still, eating those plants that are now saturated with this toxin. So I'm just saying. Oh, and then there's light pollution. We gotta talk about light pollution. So nighttime lights, they're great for our safety. They're not great for bugs. Artificial light can interfere with their ability to find food because they're, attracted to these lights, and that brings a whole bunch more bugs out, which means there's not enough food for all the bugs to go around. Artificial light can also cause problems with mating because a lot of insects mate at a certain time of day, and artificial lights mess with their perception of what time of day it is. Like take the corn earworm moth. Not to be confused by earworms from corn, but they never mate except when lights are above the light that a quarter moon produces. It's a very specific time to get busy. And artificial lights mess with that very specific business time. And last but not least, let's hear it. We've all been waiting for it. Climate change. Most insects can't control their own body heat, and this makes them vulnerable to changing temperatures and moisture levels. If the temperature gets too high, it can actually kind of mess with the development of some insect species. Like insects usually go from like egg to larva to pupa to adult stages in their life, and they are, triggered by certain temperatures and a lot of times. Well, if they rely on temperature to tell them to initiate a certain stage of life, then these out of whack temperatures that they're not used to can kind of make them develop out of sync with the resources they need to survive. Heat waves that strike can harm reproduction and fertility. Extreme rainfall may knock insects off of plants or force underground bugs to surface, which exposes them to predators. And the opposite of that, drought may threaten plants that the insects rely on for food. Another problem with warming temperatures is that it forces some species to migrate. Since some insects rely on temperature to tell them when to develop into a different stage of life, sometimes they might move to wherever there's warmer weather. And those moving insects that are usually moving north become invasive species in ecosystems that are now being severely disrupted by their presence there. A good example of that are oak and pine processionary moths that have moved northward in Europe and are now threatening some forests there. Also, fun fact, it's not just that they're moving north, they're also moving to higher altitudes. So there's some beetles and dragonflies and grasshoppers that are moving up in higher altitudes than ever before. So if you're seeing fewer bugs on your windshield when you drive back home to see your family and wondering why,
we're all trying to find the guy who did this.
It's us. We're the one that's doing it. Now, I'm sure there's many of you that want to point out that there have been several mass extinctions before humans came along, and that's absolutely true. Let's talk about them. The Ordovician Silurian extinction took place around 440 million years ago. It was thought to be caused by a rapid ice age and drop in sea levels, but a 2020 study found that volcanoes led to cooling, warming, or maybe even both. Either way, up to 85% of shallow marine species vanished, including trilobites, bivalves, and corals. The Devonian extinction took place about 370 million years ago, taking 75% of all species with it. Several things may have caused it, like excessive sedimentation, rapid global warming or cooling, meteorite or comet impacts, or massive nutrient runoff from the continents. More marine species were lost, including bony fish. Plant life also started to take over dry land, causing a drop in carbon dioxide levels. The third one happened at the end of the Permian period, about 250 million years ago. It's known as the Great Dying, or the Great Die Out. That's because up to 96% of marine species and about 70% of land species disappeared. Its main cause was large-scale volcanic eruptions that led to global warming. But some studies say an asteroid may have filled the air with particles that blocked sunlight and caused acid rain. The Triassic-Jurassic extinction happened around 200 to 250 million years ago. It claimed up to 79% of all marine and land species, paving the way for dinosaurs to dominate. Like the third extinction, there's a lot of debate around what caused it. Everything from rising sea levels to increased CO2 emissions to massive geological activity, they've all been suggested. Some scientists think a major event didn't cause it, but instead it was just a gradual turnover of species over time, and it actually shouldn't be considered a mass extinction event. The Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction event took place around 65 million years ago. This is the best known one, the Chicxulub impact that killed all the dinosaurs. But up to 76% of all species died during this event. So that's 5 mass extinctions, and some scientists say we are in the middle of a 6th extinction due to things like climate change and habitat loss, due to us, basically. Now, if you're wondering how the numbers of the 6th extinction that we may be going through right now, how that compares to the ones that I just talked about, a 2023 study found that 73 genera, not species, genera of land-dwelling vertebrates have gone extinct since 1500. Birds were the most lost, with 44 genus extinctions, followed by mammals, amphibians, and reptiles. In fact, the current rate of vertebrate genus extinction is 35 times the rate over the last million years. It's been supposed that if it wasn't for human influence, Earth would have only lost maybe 2 genera during that time. Over 500 years, human actions have caused genus extinctions that usually would have taken about 18,000 years. Which, that's the thing that always gets me when people talk about, yes, the climate has always changed, there's always been mass extinctions and that kind of thing. The problem is that things are now happening in, centuries that used to take thousands upon thousands of years. It's just happening far more quickly now. So that's the argument for a 6th mass extinction. But a study earlier this year proposes that maybe it doesn't quite qualify as an extinction event. Yes, biodiversity is declining, but not quite at a rate that is approaching a mass extinction event. That's usually defined by a loss of 75% of all species over a geological timeline. The study's author said in a statement, quote, "We found instead that extinctions of genera are very rare across plants and animals, and that they are mostly of genera found only on islands, and that those extinctions actually slowed down over the last 100 years instead of rapidly accelerating." So maybe we're actually not in a 6th mass extinction. Or maybe we are. There's a debate. But what we do know is that there are a lot of insect species that are vanishing. That 1% declining rate that I was talking about, 1% per year of decline, would take about 400 years for all the insects to be gone. But that is a moving number, by the way. We're still discovering new insect species all the time, and some insects are growing in number, and some are just evolving into different species. So yeah, unless a meteorite causes it, extinction doesn't usually happen overnight. It might slow down, it might speed up, it might go backwards because of environmental changes and conservation efforts that we're actually making. But let's just say that all the bugs do disappear, whether it's 400 years from now or 100 years from now. Could we survive? Maybe. Probably not. Even if we found a way to grow and pollinate crops without insects, we still have to deal with all the other ecosystems collapsing. Insects play a vital role in almost every food chain. Without them, most amphibians and reptiles and almost half of all bird species would vanish completely because they just have nothing to eat. As E.O. Wilson once said, quote, "If all mankind were to disappear, the world would regenerate back to the rich state of equilibrium that existed 10,000 years ago. If insects were to vanish, the environment would collapse into chaos." But look, it's not all doom and gloom. Some insects are actually thriving and living their best lives. For example, the ringlet butterfly in the UK. Warm weather has actually helped them to spread to new areas, and they've increased in number by more than 100% over the last 50 years. So it's not always a case of just insects dying out, it's just, insects changing. Whatever that move is. Conservation efforts are also helping insects survive. Like the Prague Zoo is part of an international effort to create better living conditions for a specific insect called the Lord Howe Island stick insect, which was thought to be extinct for more than 80 years. Efforts like this are important, and it's just one of many ways that can help head off the bug apocalypse. And there are things that you can do too. Things like grow native plants, convert your lawn into a natural habitat, reduce pesticide use, limit your use of exterior lighting, reduce soap runoff from washing cars and building exteriors, tell others the positive traits of insects, become an advocate for insect conservation, and get involved in local politics, support science, and vote. That last one is good for reasons other than just insects. So, the point of this video is not to panic, not to doom and gloom, but to just, be aware and love the bugs that love you. I can tell you one place that's got a lot of bugs still, and that's far north Canada. Yeah, remember how I was saying that the bugs are traveling north to escape the heat? Yeah, I got to see that firsthand last year when I traveled to far north Canada. I was there for the Oldest and Newest Places on Earth documentary. Yeah, the oldest rocks are part of the Canadian Shield, and they're out in the middle of nowhere, and I was warned that the bugs are for real out there, and I did prepare for it. I did not prepare enough. Yeah, not only did I get eaten alive by mosquitoes, which I did, but I also got attacked by these little black flies, which are basically like flying ticks. And they just pull a whole chunk of flesh out of your skin when you pull them off of you. They're awful. Oh, and there are also these little hoverflies that looked exactly like wasps. They were perfectly harmless. They didn't sting or bite or anything, but they looked just like wasps. And they would fly up in my face, and every single time it happened, my central nervous system would just short out. So at the time that I'm recording this, we're putting the very final touches on the documentary. It's really close. I'm getting excited about it. But it should be going up on Nebula in the next month or so. It's going to live there exclusively for a while. It will eventually wind up on YouTube, but there's supplemental stuff, interview footage, outtakes, little bits that got cut and whatnot. That will live on Nebula and only on Nebula. You won't be able to see that anywhere else ever. Nebula is, of course, a streaming platform where I post all my videos early and ad-free and with extra content that you can't see on YouTube. And Nebula is where a whole bunch of other thoughtful creators do the exact same thing on top of original and exclusive projects that let us stretch our talents and do bigger and better things. Things like traveling to the oldest and newest places on Earth to get a better idea of how the Earth was formed, how it continues to reshape itself, the insane scale of deep time, and our tiny little place in the middle of it. This is a documentary that I've been working on for 4 years now. We finally got a chance to take the journey last year, and I'm incredibly happy with how this thing is coming out, and I can't wait for you guys to see it. So if you want to be one of the first people to see it, just go to nebula.tv/Joe Scott. You can get 50% off your annual subscription, which is more than we usually do. It gets down to $30 a year, just $2.50 a month. Or you can gift a subscription, should you need a last-minute gift idea. Nebula's great, there's a million other awesome things to see on there, and it helps support the channel. And it's the only place you'll be able to see this documentary, which I honestly think, is the best thing I've ever done. So, take a look at the link down below, and I'll see you over there. Alright, thank you guys so much for watching. Please do like and share this video if you liked it. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I'm glad to see you. You can go check out this video that Google thinks that you'll like, and any of the others that might be on the little sidebar. And if you like them, I do invite you to subscribe. I come back with videos pretty much every week. Big thanks to the Answer Files on Patreon and the channel members who help keep the lights on around here. If you're looking for something to read, my book is still available on Amazon, The Book of Mysteries, The Last Smarter Book of Mysteries. Links down below. But until next time, you guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time. Love you guys. Take care.